Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ksenia. I make videos for people who are going through the family green card process. I'm not an attorney. My videos are based on public information, my own experience, and the experience of my subscribers. And the purpose of my channel is to give you guys the confidence to go through this process completely on your own. In today's video, I'm going to guide you through putting together your adjustment of status packet if you have arrived in the United States on a fiancé visa. I already have a video talking about how to put together this specific type of packet, but in 2025, we've seen some updates to payment methods, some additional updates to forms. So I wanted to just make an updated video for you guys. So this is what your packet will approximately look like. So let's put it together as I describe to you step by step what is exactly going to be included in your packet. At the very top of your packet, you will need to include passport style photos of the applicant. So that would be the person who have arrived in the United States on fiancé visa. So you will need to include 2 passport style photos for your packet. So there is an ongoing debate how many passport style photos you will actually need to include in your packet. You can easily get away with including only 2 passport style photos of the applicant. And also for fiancé visa adjustment of status cases, you do not need any photos, passport style photos of the petitioner. The photos should include your name in the back. You can take the photos at CVS, Walgreens, USPS, but equally you can also take them on your smartphone as long as you follow the instructions provided by the Department of State. After the passport style photos, I do recommend including a cover letter that will list out all the documents that are included in your file. You by no means are required to provide a cover letter for your case. This is just my personal preference, as it is a pretty useful checklist of all the documents that you should be including in your packet, as well as a pretty nice organized checklist for the USCIS officer who receives your packet. If you're interested, this cover letter sample can be downloaded for free from my shop, which I will also link in the description box of this video. After the photos and the cover letter, you will need to include the payment for your adjustment of status application and any additional applications that you choose to include with your file. Starting October 28th of 2025, USCIS will no longer accept other payment options like money orders or personal checks. They will only accept 2 payment options. One option you have is the G1450 form, which is the authorization for credit card transactions. The other of the 2 options, and that is the G1650 form, which was newly introduced this year, and that is the authorization for ACH transactions. So that will allow USCIS to withdraw money directly from your bank account. You can either use the 1450 or the 1650. Pick one payment option for your entire packet. Do not mix and match these forms. And also, you will need to include a separate payment form for each application that you are including in your packet. So for example, if aside from the adjustment of status application, you also choose to include employment authorization or advanced parole application, you will need to submit a separate payment form for each of those applications. Do not combine all the fees into one form. All of the payment forms should go directly on top of your file. Also, do not forget to sign these forms in pen to actually authorize USCIS to use this payment method. If you do not sign these forms, your packet will get rejected and returned back to you. After that, you will need to include a copy of the I-129F petition approval notice. So that is the approval notice that you received from your I-129F petition for alien fiancé. After this petition approval notice copy, you will need to include the actual copy of the marriage certificate to prove to USCIS that you and your fiance actually got married upon their arrival in the United States. Next, you may want to also include any additional bona fides of marital evidence with your packet if you choose to do so. Although it is not necessarily required for fiancé visa adjustment of status applicants, it is a good idea to include any additional bona fides of your marriage if you were able to obtain them before sending out your packet. So for example, if you signed up your now spouse for insurance, mortgage, joint bank account, your lease, etc., you may also want to include photographic evidence of your marriage. This is a template that I have personally created. You are welcome to use this template for your own case. If you would like to purchase it from my shop, I will link it below. But also, you're by no means required to use a special template for your photographs. You can organize them in whatever way you personally prefer. You can organize them in a Google document. Not every applicant who arrived here on a fiancé visa actually gets to send out their adjustment of status application within the 90-day period. If that is the case for you and you are applying for your adjustment of status quite late, even though technically your I-94 will have already expired after that 90-day period, there are still applicants that apply for adjustment of status many months or sometimes even years later, as long as they're still married to their petitioner. I do have a video talking about this in my fiancé visa adjustment of status playlist, so if you have any questions, I definitely recommend that you check out that video. And that would follow after the marriage certificate copy. So after all of this evidence and supporting documentation, you will also need to include your vaccination documentation worksheet that was given back to you upon arrival to the United States. It is likely that the customs officer took your sealed medical exam away from you, but they did provide you back with the vaccination worksheet. That is something that you will need to attach with your file. If it has been more than 1 year since your medical exam was completed, at the time that you apply for adjustment of status, you will need to redo your medical exam here. After the initial batch of documents, you can go ahead and begin submitting the application for adjustment of status. So as you can see in my packet, I opted into using separator sheets like the one you see on the screen right now. And by the way, if you download my free cover letter samples for your packet, these separator sheets are included in the same file when you download it, but obviously you will need to adjust it based on your specific case. Now, the way the documents are listed on the separator sheet is the same way they are listed in the cover letter, and they are put together in the same order in the actual packet. So as you can see, after the separator sheet, I have included the G1145 electronic notification form. That is the form that will allow USCIS to notify you electronically when they receive your adjustment of status application. And by the way, this electronic notification form should go on top of each application that you are submitting. After that, you will include the I-485 application. This is the actual green card application. When submitting your forms, double check always the expiration date on the top right corner and the edition date on the bottom left corner of each page. Make sure that the edition dates match on every single page of your application. Also make sure that the page number is clearly visible at the bottom. You will also notice that my applications have a barcode at the bottom. But if for some reason during your filling out of the applications or printing them, the barcode disappears. That is not a big deal. USCIS will still accept your forms as long as the edition and the page number is still visible at the bottom of each page. After the form itself, you can follow it up with the supporting documents that are required for this form. So in your case, this would be proof of your birth in the form of your foreign birth certificate, as well as the translation of your birth certificate. Any translations that you provide should be notarized, but it is not a requirement by USCIS. After that, you will need to include a copy of your passport, the biographical page, the copy of your visa on which you have arrived in the United States, and a copy of your I-94 arrival departure record to show the proof of lawful entry on the category that you claim to be, which is fiancé. There are also case-specific documents that may apply to you depending on your special circumstance. And in that case, you should always review the form instructions, especially for the form I-485. You want to make sure that you're not missing out any additional supporting documents. For example, if you had any traffic citations, you may want to include proof of you taking care of those. Or if you have changed your name, then additional documents showing your name change, etc., etc. So once again, always review the form instructions to make sure that you're not missing out any important documents. Next, you will provide the affidavit of support sponsorship form from the petitioner. Here, you will include the required documents, specifically the form I-864 itself, the proof of status of the sponsor, so your petitioner, followed by the tax returns and W-2s. As you can see, I did put the W-2s from each tax year on top of each tax year. After that, I included the employment verification letter from the petitioning sponsor, as well as pay stubs from the petitioning sponsor, and you'll want to ideally submit 6 months of pay stubs from the petitioner. And by the way, this form still must be submitted even if your petitioner has already submitted the I-134 sponsorship form for when you were going through the consular portion of your case. But for adjustment of status, your petitioner will once again need to fill out the form I-864 and provide income proof. So that will go next in order after your I-485 application. And if your petitioning sponsor does not make enough money to qualify to fully support you, you may also opt into using a joint sponsor or household members. So in that case, I do recommend including those documents after additional separator sheets to show that these people indeed will be co-sponsoring you for your adjustment of status case. The documents that are listed on these separator sheets is the exact order in which I also provided these additional forms. If you have any additional questions about the affidavit of support, I do want to redirect you guys to the affidavit of support playlist, where I have a ton of videos about this form. I have worked really hard on that playlist over the past 5 years so that you can avoid any confusion. So please, if you have any questions about this form before you comment under this video, I do please encourage you to go check out the playlist, browse through the videos, through the comments under those videos to see if your question has already been answered. So after the affidavit of support, you may also choose to submit the 2 additional optional applications. It is totally up to you whether you would like to submit the employment authorization application 765 and the advanced parole application I-131. As you can see, with each of these, I have a separator sheet, an electronic notification form, the form itself, and the additional supporting documents that are required for each of these applications in case you need them. You do need to pay the application fees for these forms. The fee for 765 is currently $260, and the fee for I-131 is currently $630. Now, the payments for these two applications, as you saw, were already included in the beginning of my entire packet. If after you have sent out your packet, you have realized that you would like to include these forms after all, you can go ahead and do so online using your online USCIS account. And I will link those guides in the description box below. Once you put together all your applications, you can clip them together using one big clip like this one. I also wanted to cover the part of the packet for those of you who also have an accompanying child, a K2 derivative beneficiary. The K2 beneficiary will need to have their own adjustment of status applications, but these two applications or these two packets can be sent in the same exact envelope as long as you keep them divided in some kind of way. Like I'm showing in this video, I am using a separate large paper clip to keep this case separate. At the very top, we are going to include two passport style photos of this applicant. The Form I-485 instructions don't necessarily mention if you have to be of certain age in order to include passport style photos. So in my opinion, if your K2 beneficiary is of any age, you should include two passport style photos to their portion of the packet. Next, we're going to follow that up with a cover letter. My cover letter sample for this case does include the cover letter for a K2 beneficiary also. Next, we're going to follow it by a payment for their own adjustment of status application. So just as discussed in the very beginning of this video, you will need to attach either a form G1450 or G1650 to pay for this application. And I also encourage you to double check the USCIS fee calculator to make sure that you submit the correct fee for this child. If your child is under age 14, for this specific case, the fee for their adjustment of status application will only be $950. If this K2 beneficiary is over the age 14, then you're going to have to pay a full fee of $1,440 for their adjustment of status application. And if you are also choosing to include advanced parole application or employment authorization application in their packet, then of course you will need to attach separate payments for those as well. After the photos, the cover letter, and the fee, we're going to include a copy of the I-129F receipt of approval one more time, then follow it by a copy of the marriage certificate between the petitioner and the K1 beneficiary once again. We're going to also follow it up with this child's vaccination record from the medical exam that was completed overseas. We are then going to follow it by a divider like the one I'm showing here. After that, once again, we're going to include the electronic notification form G1145, followed by the adjustment of status application I-485, followed by the supporting documents that were listed on our divider. Essentially, all of the same supporting documents that we have included for the K1 beneficiary. After that, I'm going to include another divider with the I-864 affidavit of support. What is interesting for K2 beneficiaries in this case is that you don't actually have to fill out a separate affidavit of support form. You only need to make a copy of the affidavit of support that was filled out for the K1 beneficiary, followed by essentially all of the same supporting documents that are necessary for the affidavit of support. If you have to include a household member or a joint sponsor, you will do the same thing by submitting copies of those affidavits of support and essentially copies of the same supporting documents. For the K2 derivative applicant, you do not need to include any kind of additional bona fide marital evidence like we did for K1. And in this particular case, in my sample, I decided not to apply for employment authorization and advanced parole for this child. Hence, I did not include those applications in the packet. But once again, you can still do that. This is what the completed packet or packets, if that is the case for you, would look like. Keep in mind that if you have multiple K2 beneficiaries accompanying you, you will need to prepare a separate K2 packet for each of those children. But once again, you can mail them all in one envelope. I also wanted to cover some additional packet organization tips. USCIS does not allow staples or paper clips in your file. Also, everything must be printed single-sided. In terms of black and white versus color, it is a personal preference. USCIS will accept your packet if it is entirely black and white. Do not hole punch anything anywhere. Do not use correction fluid or highlighting. I will also link a video in which I talked about some 15 very important form filing tips, as well as an additional video talking about signatures on your USCIS forms. I do recommend that you check out those two videos. So once you put your packet together and clip it all together, you may use an envelope from USPS like the one I'm showing in the video, or if your packet is too thick and doesn't really fit in an envelope like this, you are allowed to use a small box. If you are not sure where exactly to send your file, I do recommend that you check out the link that I included in the cover letter sample, which will direct you to the filing addresses for this type of adjustment of status case. I will also put this link in the description box of this video. If you found this video useful, do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I hope to see you guys in my next videos. Bye!